All right, folks. So we're in week 4 of our Survey of Criminology class, SOCH 333, Fall 2020. And this week the topic is the prison industrial complex. So to a certain extent, this is a term that we've been hinting at throughout the last 3 weeks. But I do want to spend an entire week sort of really focusing on the term and understanding it because it is becoming a mainstream phrase. And I think it's sort of, people use the term a lot and they don't necessarily define it, which if you have noticed, that's starting to become a theme in my videos. So you can see my Laulima. I'm going to hop into student view so my Laulima page in the video will look like yours. And so you can see this week we have a video by Angela Davis. This is an old video from me that I will be getting rid of and replacing it with the video I'm recording now. You can see you got your checklist. This week we're doing a quiz, so you have quiz 2. And we're still reading Are Prisons Obsolete by Angela Davis. All right, so in my overview, I define the prison industrial complex as the ways in which U.S. crime, prisons, and prisoners are treated like a bureaucratic machine. And so that's very like lay terms. I just really want the term to be accessible to students in this class. So it's this idea that the criminal system, all aspects of it, so whether it's the law, it's prison, it's the court system, it's all very bureaucratic. And it's just this like huge conglomerate of a social institution that's regulating so many different aspects of our lives. And so that's in short how I would define the prison industrial complex. And of course, the readings and the video by Angela Davis will go more in depth. But something that I want to add on to the conversation is the idea of neoliberalism, because that term, again, it's another term that often gets used by academics and it's becoming more mainstream, but often it isn't defined when it's used. And the process of neoliberalism is very similar to the process of the prison industrial complex. And so neoliberalism, it literally, if you break down the root words, it means new liberal, right? That's what neoliberalism means in terms of the language. We use that word to describe how this new form of liberalism is very, very bureaucratic. It's very business-like. You're applying a business model to different social institutions such as education or prison in this case. And so liberal we associate with like being progressive, new, different, right? Like historically, that's what we have associated in our society with the term progressive or liberal. But neoliberal is really like this glossy, glossed over, superficial way of thinking about liberal ideology. And so you get things like higher education running as a business model. So this seems like a great idea, right? Like universities are going to help the economy by using a business model and sort of producing more money for our economy. And that sounds great, right? Like that's a neoliberal way of thinking about higher education. But then you as students know that this means you are treated very differently by administrators in your institution, because suddenly the most important thing is tuition money. And faculty members are very focused on getting multi-million-dollar research grants because that brings in money to the university, which in turn means they're less focused on teaching classes. And so this neoliberal model, superficially, it seems very good. Education is just going to operate using this business model. It's going to create more income, more money, more revenue. And it's great. It's like this liberal new way of thinking about education. But we know that there's a lot to critique there, right? Because we all are a part of this neoliberal model for higher education. So that's a way of thinking about neoliberalism. And we should be critical of it, right? Because we know that when you think about a social institution in a superficial way, that there are going to be problems, unforeseen problems. And so similarly, when you think about the prison industrial complex, you think about the prison system just being like this machine that superficially might seem like it's a good thing, right? Like, oh, like our prison population is helping to fight wildfires in California and they're saving lives. That sounds great, right? Or prison labor is producing, products for Victoria's Secret and other huge corporations, and that sounds great because now their labor is cheaper and they're not taking that labor overseas. But when we dig down and look at that more deeply, we realize that these inmates are getting paid slave labor wages, if anything. And it may seem like this great thing because, oh, these inmates are being productive. They're actually doing something with their time. They're producing something. And they're getting, even if they're not getting paid a fair wage, they're getting some sort of income. And that will be enough for them to pay for their commissary items they might need. Like, this neoliberal and this prison industrial complex view of these new ways of thinking about social institutions, it sounds really good superficially. But then we see, prison labor just leads to further inequities among inmates because now they're not seen as individuals. They're dehumanized. They're seen as these as a way to produce cheap labor for corporations. And so that's just sort of me riffing off of thinking about the prison industrial complex and what that means, not only as we think about the criminal system as a social institution, but also as we think about how the criminal system and the way that it operates, what does that mean for the everyday lives of our inmates who are perhaps being forced to fight wildfires in California, or they're being forced to create products for corporations. And what does that mean? And how also does the prison industrial complex relate to neoliberalism and the neoliberalization of other social institutions such as higher education and really K through 12 education for that matter. So that's sort of what I hope folks are thinking about during week 4 as you focus in on Angela Davis's work related to the prison industrial complex. And of course, as always, I'm open to meeting with students electronically via Zoom. My email address is hannahli@hawaii.edu. And I think that's all I have this week. Take care.